The soft hum of the ship's engines filled the small lab where Lieutenant Jimin Park worked. Her fingers moved carefully over the control panel as she checked the vital signs of the animals under her care. The ESS Horizon had been traveling through space for 3 months now. Their mission was simple but important: to meet the Vash, a new alien race that humans had just found. Jimin looked up from her work when she heard a low rumble. In the corner of the lab, inside a large reinforced habitat, the ship's most special passenger watched her with bright golden eyes. "Are you hungry again, Taejo?" Jimin asked, a small smile forming on her lips. The large puma stretched lazily, muscles rippling under his tawny coat. He was no ordinary big cat. Scientists had changed his genes to make him smarter and stronger than any natural puma. Taejo was both a companion and a guard on this mission. As Jimin approached his habitat, she felt the familiar tingle in her mind. Since she was a child, Jimin had been able to form mental connections with certain Earth mammals. The doctors called it a genetic anomaly. Captain Suman Lee called it an asset. That was why Jimin was on this mission. She opened the habitat door, and Taejo padded out silently. He rubbed his large head against her leg, and Jimin felt waves of contentment flowing from his mind to hers. "I know you sense something," she whispered, running her hand along his back. "We're getting close to them." The ship's speakers crackled to life. "Lieutenant Park, please report to the bridge," Captain Suman's voice announced. "Bring Taejo." 10 minutes later, Jimin stood on the bridge with Taejo sitting calmly beside her. Through the large front window, they could see a planet glowing blue and green against the blackness of space. "We've received a message from the Vash," Captain Suman said, her face serious. "They want to meet us." Chief Science Officer Dong-Yen Kim looked up from his station. "The scans show they have a giant space station in orbit around their planet. Their technology seems very advanced." "More advanced than ours?" asked Security Lead Minji Kang, her hand resting on her weapon. "Yes," Dong-Yen said. "Much more advanced." Jimin felt Taejo grow tense beside her. The puma's ears were flat against his head, and a low growl rumbled in his chest. Through their mental link, she felt waves of worry and danger. "Taejo doesn't like this," Jimin said quietly. Captain Suman turned to her. "What does he sense?" "I'm not sure. It's not clear. Just a feeling of wrong." The ship suddenly shook. The lights flickered, and several control panels started flashing red. "What's happening?" Captain Suman demanded. "Some kind of energy wave from the station," Dong-Yen reported, his fingers moving quickly over his screen. "It's disrupting our systems." Taejo's growl grew louder. Images flashed through Jimin's mind. Dark shapes moving in shadows, sharp teeth, hidden threats. The puma was trying to warn her of something, but the message was confused. "Captain," Jimin said, "I think we need to be careful. Taejo is sensing danger." The communications officer spoke up. "Captain, we're receiving another message from the Vash. They say the energy wave was an accident. They're inviting a small team to visit their station as a sign of friendship." Captain Suman looked around the bridge, her eyes finally resting on Jimin and Taejo. "Lieutenant Park, Officer Kim, Security Lead Kang, you'll come with me," she decided. "And Lieutenant, I want Taejo to join us." "Is that wise, Captain?" Minji asked, looking doubtfully at the puma. "Jimin's connection with Taejo gives us an advantage," Captain Suman explained. "If there's danger that our technology can't detect, he might sense it." As the team prepared to meet the mysterious Vash, Jimin felt Taejo's mind brush against hers again. This time, she clearly felt his message: be ready. Something waited for them on that station. Something hidden. The first contact with an alien race was about to begin, and Jimin knew it might not be the peaceful meeting they had hoped for. The team prepared to board the shuttle that would take them to the Vash space station. Lieutenant Jimin Park checked her equipment one last time while Taejo paced nearby. The puma's tail swished back and forth, showing his unease. "Are you sure about bringing that animal?" Security Lead Minji asked, eyeing Taejo with concern. He's not just an animal, Jimin said firmly. And yes, I'm sure. Captain Suman nodded. Taijo stays with us. His instincts might save our lives. The small shuttle left the horizon and moved toward the massive Vash station. It was beautiful, like a silver flower floating in space. Lights pulsed along its curved sides, making it glow against the darkness. Amazing engineering, said Chief Science Officer Dong Yun, his eyes wide as he took readings on his device. Their technology must be hundreds of years ahead of ours. Jimin felt Taijo press against her leg. The Puma's thoughts pushed into her mind, a mix of wonder and warning. He sensed power, but also something hidden beneath the surface. Their shuttle docked at the station with a soft bump. The team stood before the airlock, weapons ready just in case. Captain Suman took a deep breath. Remembered, she said, we represent all of humanity. Let's make a good first impression. The airlock door slid open. Standing there were 3 tall figures. The Vash looked almost human, but their skin was nearly clear, with soft light moving under it like flowing water. They had no hair, and their eyes were large and completely black. Welcome, humans of Earth, said the tallest one in perfect English. I am the interpreter. We have waited long to meet you. Captain Suman stepped forward. Thank you for your invitation. We come in peace and friendship. The interpreter's eyes moved to Taijo, who stood perfectly still beside Jimin. You bring an animal with you. How interesting. He is part of our team, Jimin explained, feeling protective. Of course, the interpreter said smoothly. Please follow me. We have prepared rooms for you and wish to show you our station. They walked through shining hallways. Everything was clean and perfect. The walls glowed with soft light, and there was quiet music playing that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. The Vash showed them large rooms with strange plants and beautiful art. They explained their history and spoke of peace between their worlds. But Jimin noticed they never answered direct questions about their technology or how many Vash lived on the station. Beside her, Taijo grew more tense with each passing minute. When a group of Vash scientists approached, the Puma's fur stood on end. Jimin could feel his thoughts. Danger, threat, be careful. This is our main research center, the interpreter said, pointing to a large door at the end of a hallway. But instead of going through it, he turned and led them a different way. And here is where you will stay during your visit. Later, in their private rooms, the human team gathered to talk. Something isn't right, Minji said quietly. Did you notice they avoided showing us anything important? Dong Yun nodded. I tried to scan deeper into the station, but my equipment stopped working. They're hiding something, Captain Suman agreed. She turned to Jimin. What does Taijo think? Jimin placed her hand on the Puma's head, closing her eyes to focus on their connection. Images flowed between them. Dark rooms, fear, pain, and a sealed door they had passed earlier. There's something behind that big door they didn't take us through, Jimin said, opening her eyes. Something they don't want us to see. Captain Suman looked serious. Then we need to find out what it is. Tonight, after they think we're asleep. Taijo rumbled deep in his chest, and Jimin translated his feelings. He says we need to be very careful, she told the others. The Vash are not what they seem to be. As night fell on the station, the team prepared for their secret mission. What they would find behind that door would change everything they thought they knew about their new friends. The team prepared to board the shuttle that would take them to the Vash space station. Lieutenant Jimin Park checked her equipment one last time while Taijo paced nearby. The Puma's tail swished back and forth, showing his unease. Are you sure about bringing that animal? Security lead Minji asked, eyeing Taijo with concern. He's not just an animal, Jimin said firmly. And yes, I'm sure. Captain Suman nodded. Taijo stays with us. His instincts might save our lives. The small shuttle left the horizon and moved toward the massive Vash station. It was beautiful, like a silver flower floating in space. Lights pulsed along its curved sides, making it glow against the darkness. "Amazing engineering," said Chief Science Officer Dongyun, his eyes wide as he took readings on his device. "Their technology must be hundreds of years ahead of ours." Jimin felt Taijo press against her leg. The Puma's thoughts pushed into her mind, a mix of wonder and warning. He sensed power, but also something hidden beneath the surface. Their shuttle docked at the station with a soft bump. The team stood before the airlock, weapons ready just in case. Captain Suman took a deep breath. "Remember," she said, "we represent all of humanity. Let's make a good first impression." The airlock doors slid open. Standing there were three tall figures. The Vash looked almost human, but their skin was nearly clear, with soft light moving under it like flowing water. They had no hair, and their eyes were large and completely black. "Welcome, humans of Earth," said the tallest one in perfect English. "I am the interpreter. We have waited long to meet you." Captain Suman stepped forward. "Thank you for your invitation. We come in peace and friendship." The interpreter's eyes moved to Taijo, who stood perfectly still beside Jimin. "You bring an animal with you. How interesting. He is part of our team," Jimin explained, feeling protective. "Of course," the interpreter said smoothly. "Please follow me. We have prepared rooms for you and wish to show you our station." They walked through shining hallways. Everything was clean and perfect. The walls glowed with soft light, and there was quiet music playing that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. The Vash showed them large rooms with strange plants and beautiful art. They explained their history and spoke of peace between their worlds. But Jimin noticed they never answered direct questions about their technology or how many Vash lived on the station. Beside her, Taijo grew more tense with each passing minute. When a group of Vash scientists approached, the Puma's fur stood on end. Jimin could feel his thoughts. "Danger, threat, be careful. This is our main research center," the interpreter said, pointing to a large door at the end of a hallway. But instead of going through it, he turned and led them a different way. "And here is where you will stay during your visit." Later, in their private rooms, the human team gathered to talk. "Something isn't right," Minji said quietly. "Did you notice they avoided showing us anything important?" Dongyun nodded. "I tried to scan deeper into the station, but my equipment stopped working." "They're hiding something," Captain Suman agreed. She turned to Jimin. "What does Taijo think?" Jimin placed her hand on the Puma's head, closing her eyes to focus on their connection. Images flowed between them. Dark rooms, fear, pain, and a sealed door they had passed earlier. "There's something behind that big door they didn't take us through," Jimin said, opening her eyes. "Something they don't want us to see." Captain Suman looked serious. "Then we need to find out what it is. Tonight, after they think we're asleep." Taijo rumbled deep in his chest, and Jimin translated his feelings. "He says we need to be very careful," she told the others. "The Vash are not what they seem to be." As night fell on the station, the team prepared for their secret mission. What they would find behind that door would change everything they thought they knew about their new friends. The alarms blared as red lights flashed throughout the laboratory. Jimin looked at Captain Suman for guidance. "We need to split up," Captain Suman decided quickly. "Dongyun, copy all the data you can. Minji, watch the main door. Jimin and Taijo, find another way out." Jimin nodded and turned to Taijo. The Puma's eyes were alert, scanning the room. Through their mental connection, she felt his suggestion. Air vents above them. "There," Jimin pointed to a large vent in the ceiling. "Taijo thinks we can escape that way." Minji called from the door. "They're coming. At least 10 guards." The sound of running footsteps grew louder in the hallway. Captain Suman helped Dongyun pull a data drive from the computer. "Got it," Dongyun said, holding up the small device. "All their plans are here." The main door began to open. Jimin quickly climbed on a table and pushed open the vent cover. Taijo leaped up beside her in one powerful jump. "Everyone, up now." Captain Suman ordered. They scrambled into the vent just as the door opened fully. Vash guards rushed into the room, pointing strange weapons. The team crawled quickly through the narrow metal tunnel, with Taijo in the lead. "Which way to the shuttle bay?" Captain Suman whispered. Jimin concentrated on her connection with Taijo. The Puma seemed to have a map of the station in his mind from all the smells and sounds he had noticed earlier. "This way," she said, following Taijo's guidance. They crawled through the dark vents for what seemed like a long time. Below them, they could hear Vash guards searching everywhere. Finally, they reached another vent that Taijo indicated was important. Minji carefully opened it, and they dropped down into an empty corridor. According to Dongyun's map, they were close to the shuttle bay. "We need to contact the Horizon," Captain Suman said. "They need to know what's happening." Jimin pulled out her personal device. "The main communications are blocked, but maybe I can send a short message through my animal monitoring system. It uses a different frequency." She worked quickly, attaching the data drive to her device. "I'll send the evidence with a warning message." Suddenly, a group of Vash appeared at the end of the corridor. The aliens raised their weapons. Before they could fire, Taijo charged at them, his powerful body knocking 2 guards down. The team ran in the opposite direction. "The shuttle bay is this way," Donghyun shouted, pointing right at the next junction. They turned the corner and froze. In front of them stood the interpreter with more guards. "How disappointing," the interpreter said, his voice cold. "We offered you friendship, and you respond with spying." "You call this friendship?" Captain Suman demanded. "We found your laboratory. We know what you're doing to other species." The interpreter's skin glowed brighter with anger. "Humans are perfect for our needs. Your neural patterns are complex in ways no other species has shown. You should be honored to contribute to our advancement." "You plan to invade Earth," Minji said, her hand on her weapon. "Not invade. Harvest." The interpreter smiled. "Your captain on the Horizon is concerned about your team. He will send more humans to help. More specimens for our work." Jimin felt sick. Her message to the ship needed to get through. She pressed the final button on her device, sending the data and warning. Just then, Taijo appeared behind the Vash guards. He had circled around through a side passage. With a fierce roar, he leaped at the guards, creating chaos. "Run," Jimin shouted. The team scattered, using the distraction to escape in different directions. Jimin ran with Taijo once he caught up to her. She didn't know if her message had reached the Horizon, but she had to believe it did. They needed to find a way off this station before more humans walked into the Vash trap. Jimin ran through the empty corridors of the Vash station with Taijo at her side. They had been running for 20 minutes, trying to find the others or a way back to the shuttle bay. Alarms still rang throughout the station, and red lights flashed on the walls. "We need to find a place to hide and think," Jimin said, out of breath. Taijo nudged her toward a small door. Inside was a storage room filled with boxes and equipment. They slipped in and Jimin closed the door behind them. "Good idea," she whispered, patting the Puma's head. Through their mental link, she felt Taijo's concern. He was worried about the others, especially Captain Suman. Jimin shared his worry. "I know. We need to find them and get off this station." She checked her device. The message to the Horizon showed as sent, but there was no way to know if it had been received. She hoped Captain Jawan on the ship would understand the warning and not send more people into the trap. Taijo's ears suddenly perked up. He heard something outside. Jimin held her breath as footsteps approached. The door slid open, and she was ready to run when she saw who it was. "Dongyun," she said with relief. "You're okay." The science officer stepped into the room and closed the door. "I've been looking everywhere for you," he said. "The others were caught. We need to move quickly." Jimin felt sick. "Captain Suman and Minji are captured." "Yes, the Vash have them, but I know a way to the shuttle bay. We can escape and bring help." Something felt wrong. Taijo was tense beside her. a low growl building in his throat. Jimin realized the puma was not happy to see Donghyun. "What's wrong with your animal?" Donghyun asked, taking a step back. "He's not usually like this," Jimin said slowly. She placed her hand on Taejo's back, trying to understand his thoughts. Images flashed in her mind. Donghyun talking to the Vash before the mission. Secret meetings, plans. "You're working with them," she said in shock, backing away. Donghyun's face changed. His friendly look disappeared, replaced by cold anger. "I was hoping to save you, Jimin," he said. "The Vash offered me so much. Their technology, their knowledge. All they wanted was help getting more human specimens." "You betrayed humanity," Jimin said, still not believing it. "For what?" "Technology. You don't understand what they can do," Donghyun said. "They'd been watching Earth for years. They chose humans because our brains are perfect for their computers. I'm helping build the future." He pulled out a Vash weapon. "Now come with me. They want you alive." Taejo's muscles tensed, ready to attack. Jimin could feel his rage building. "The Vash are using you," she tried to explain. "Once they have what they want, they'll take your brain too." "I'm too valuable to them," Donghyun said with pride. "Now move, or I'll stun your pet." Taejo didn't wait. With a powerful leap, he jumped at Donghyun. The scientist fired his weapon, but Taejo was too fast. They crashed to the floor together as Jimin grabbed a metal bar from a nearby shelf. Donghyun struggled with the powerful puma, his weapon firing again. This time, a beam of energy grazed Taejo's side. The puma roared in pain but kept fighting. Jimin swung the metal bar, knocking the weapon from Donghyun's hand. She grabbed it and pointed it at him. "Call the guards and I'll shoot," she threatened. With Taejo pinning him down, Donghyun couldn't move. Blood ran from scratches on his face and arms. "You're making a mistake," he said. "The Vash will find you. There's no escape." Jimin checked Taejo's wound. It wasn't deep, but it was bleeding. The puma growled at Donghyun, wanting to finish the fight. "Not now," Jimin told him through their link. "We need to find the others." They tied Donghyun up with cables from the storage room and left him there. As they moved back into the corridor, Jimin knew they had to hurry. Now they had to rescue their friends and stop a traitor's plan that threatened all of Earth. Jimin and Taejo moved carefully through the station. They needed to find Captain Suman and Minji, but they also needed a plan. The Vash were too many, and even with Taejo's strength, they couldn't fight their way out. "We need to think like them," Jimin whispered to Taejo as they hid in a service tunnel. "What would hurt them most?" The puma's golden eyes seemed to understand. Through their mental link, he shared an idea. Images of the station's glowing walls, the humming sounds they had heard everywhere. "Power," Jimin said, understanding his thoughts. "If we cut their power, we might have a chance to free the others and escape." Jimin remembered seeing a map on Donghyun's device. There was a main power room near the center of the station. If they could reach it, maybe they could cause enough damage to create confusion and darkness. Taejo limped slightly from his wound, but he refused to slow down. His loyalty to Jimin and the mission pushed him forward. They avoided the main corridors, using service tunnels and air vents that Taejo could smell out with his sharp senses. After an hour of careful movement, they'd reached a section near the center of the station. More Vash were here, moving quickly with worried faces. Something was happening. "They must know about Donghyun," Jimin whispered. "We need to hurry." She checked her device again. To her surprise, there was a message from the horizon. It was short but clear. Message received. No rescue team. Preparing defense. Find way back. Good, she told Taejo. At least the ship won't send more people into this trap. They waited until the corridor was clear, then moved to a large door marked with glowing symbols. According to the map in Jimin's memory, this should be the main power core. "We need a way in," she said, looking at the security panel. Taejo nudged her leg and looked up. Above them was another air vent. "You're brilliant," she told him with a smile. They used a stack of containers to reach the vent. Inside, they crawled until they were directly over the power room. Through the metal grate, Jimin could see a massive glowing cylinder that reached from floor to ceiling. Around it were control panels with Vash technicians working. "That must be the main power source," she whispered. She still had the weapon she had taken from Dongyan. It was set to stun, but maybe it could damage the equipment. They needed to get closer. They moved through the vent until they were above a section with no Vash. Carefully, Jimin removed the grate, and they dropped down into the power room. They hid behind a large machine as a technician walked past. "We need to damage the cooling systems," Jimin said, looking at the pipes running into the power core. "Without cooling, the core will shut down to prevent explosion." Taizhou stood guard while Jimin worked. She used the tools from her belt to open a control panel. Inside were wires and strange crystals. She didn't understand the alien technology, but she knew enough about power systems to recognize cooling regulators. Carefully, she crossed wires and removed crystals. Alarms began to sound, different from the ones before. The Vash technicians ran to other control panels, trying to find the problem. "Time to go," Jimin told Taizhou. They turned to escape the way they had come, but found their path blocked. A group of Vash guards stood at the door, weapons ready. At their center was the interpreter, his face angry. "I am disappointed in you, human," he said. "You have damaged our station." Jimin backed up, holding her weapon. Taizhou moved in front of her, protecting her despite his injury. His mind touched hers with a clear message. He would fight to the end for her. "It's too late," Jimin said to the interpreter. "Your power core is failing, and our ship knows about your plan now." Warning lights flashed everywhere as the power began to flicker. The sabotage was working, but now they had to survive long enough to escape. The lights in the power room flickered as Jimin and Taizhou faced the Vash guards. The interpreter stepped forward, his skin glowing with anger. "Fix what you have done," he demanded, "or your friends will suffer." "Let them go first," Jimin said, trying to sound brave. The interpreter laughed. "You are not in a position to make deals, human." Suddenly, the lights went out completely. For a few seconds, everything was dark except for the glow of the Vash skin. Then emergency lights came on, bathing everything in dim red light. "It has begun," Jimin whispered to Taizhou. "The cooling system is failing." The interpreter turned to his guards. "Take her. Kill the animal." Taizhou didn't wait for the guards to move. With a powerful roar, he leaped at the closest Vash. Despite his injury, the enhanced Puma moved like lightning. His strong jaws closed on the arm of one guard while his claws struck another. Jimin fired her weapon at a third guard, sending him to the floor. The remaining Vash started shooting back. Energy beams flashed through the red-lit room. "Run, Jimin," a voice called from the door. Jimin looked over in surprise. Captain Suman and Minji stood there, holding Vash weapons. They had escaped during the power failure. "The shuttle is ready," Minji shouted. "We need to leave now." Captain Suman fired at the guards, creating a path for Jimin. "Move." Jimin ran toward them, but stopped when she realized Taizhou wasn't following. The Puma was surrounded by guards, fighting with all his might. The interpreter stood back, watching coldly. "Taizhou," Jimin called. "Come on." Through their mental link, she felt his determination. He would hold them off while she escaped. He would not leave this fight. "No," she said. "I won't leave you." She turned and fired her weapon at the guards surrounding Taizhou. Two fell, but there were too many. The interpreter raised his own weapon and aimed it directly at Jimin. "Foolish human," he said. He fired. Jimin saw the energy beam coming toward her, too fast to dodge. But before it hit, something large and powerful leaked in front of her. Taizhou took the full force of the shot. The energy spear went through his side, and he fell to the floor with a pained cry that broke Jimin's heart. "No," she screamed. Captain Suman and Minji fired continuously, driving back the Vash guards. The interpreter stepped behind his men, shouting orders. Jimin knelt beside Taijo. Blood poured from his wound. It was much worse than the first injury. Through their mental link, she felt his pain, but also his happiness that she was safe. "Don't you dare die," she told him, tears in her eyes. "We're going home together." With strength born from desperation, Jimin lifted the large puma in her arms. He was heavy, but she refused to leave him. Captain Suman helped her while Minji continued to fire at the guards. "The station is going to lock down soon," Captain Suman warned. "We have minutes at most." They moved as quickly as they could through the red-lit corridors. The station shook as power systems failed. Alarms blared everywhere. They reached a junction, and Jimin felt Taijo's mind nudge hers. Despite his pain, he was still trying to help. He showed her a different path, a shorter way to the shuttle bay. "This way," Jimin said, turning left. More Vash appeared behind them, led by the interpreter. His face was twisted with hatred. "You will not escape," he shouted. But they were almost at the shuttle bay. Just a few more corridors. Taijo grew heavier in Jimin's arms as his strength faded. Blood dripped to the floor as they ran. But his golden eyes stayed fixed on Jimin's face, his mind connected to hers. They would escape together, or not at all. The shuttle bay doors were just ahead. Jimin's arms burned with the effort of carrying Taijo. The puma's blood soaked the front of her uniform, warm and sticky against her skin. "We're almost there," she whispered to him. "Stay with me." Through their mental link, she felt his life force growing weaker. His thoughts were becoming cloudy, but his golden eyes remained fixed on her face. He was fighting to stay alive, fighting to stay with her. Captain Suman reached the shuttle bay first and quickly typed the access code. The doors slid open to reveal their small shuttle, untouched since they had arrived. "Get in," Captain Suman ordered. "Minji and I will hold them off." Jimin carried Taijo into the shuttle and gently laid him on the floor. His breathing was shallow and quick. The wound from the energy spear had burned through muscle and damaged internal organs. No ordinary animal could have survived this long. But Taijo was no ordinary animal. Jimin found the medical kit and tried to stop the bleeding. Outside, she could hear the sounds of energy weapons firing as Captain Suman and Minji defended the door. "I need to help them," she told Taijo, "but I'll be right back." His mind touched hers weakly. He understood. Jimin grabbed a weapon and moved to the shuttle door. Captain Suman and Minji were pinned down behind cargo containers as Vash guards fired at them from the corridor. Jimin joined them, adding her fire to theirs. "We need to close the bay doors once we're on the shuttle," she said. "The controls are over there." Minji pointed to a panel on the far wall. "But it's too exposed. We'd be shot before reaching it." The interpreter's voice called from the corridor. "Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick. Continue to resist, and we will take you apart slowly for our research." "Not much of a choice," Captain Suman muttered. Suddenly, Jimin felt a surge of energy in her mind. Taijo was calling to her. His thoughts were clear again, filled with determination. He had a plan. "No," she said aloud, understanding what he intended. There must be another way. But there wasn't, and they both knew it. Someone needed to reach the control panel while the others provided cover fire. Someone fast and strong enough to make it across the open space. Someone already dying. Jimin ran back to the shuttle. Taijo had somehow managed to stand. Blood dripped steadily from his wound, but his eyes were bright with purpose. "You can't," Jimin said, tears running down her face. "Please." Taijo rubbed his head against her hand one last time. His mind filled hers with memories. Training together back on Earth. Quiet nights in her quarters on the ship. All the times they had worked as one. Then came a feeling of deep contentment, of purpose fulfilled, of love. "I can't lose you," Jimin whispered. But Taijo had made his decision. With the last of his strength, he leaped past her, out of the shuttle, and into the bay. Captain Suman and Minji were surprised to see the wounded puma, but quickly understood his purpose. They increased their fire, drawing the Vash's attention. Taejo ran across the open bay, a blur of tawny fur. Energy beams flashed around him as the Vash guards fired. One struck his leg, another grazed his back, but he kept moving. The interpreter stepped into the bay, his weapon aimed. "Stop that creature." But it was too late. Taejo reached the control panel and with one powerful swipe of his paw, activated the emergency shuttle launch sequence. The bay doors began to close as warning lights flashed. The interpreter fired one last shot. It struck Taejo directly in the chest. The Puma fell, his task complete. "Taejo," Jimin screamed. "No!" Jimin screamed as she saw Taejo fall. Without thinking, she ran from cover toward the fallen Puma. "Jimin, come back!" Captain Suman shouted, but Jimin didn't hear. Nothing mattered except reaching Taejo. Energy beams from Vash weapons hit the floor around her, but somehow none touched her. She reached the Puma and dropped to her knees beside him. Taejo was still breathing, but barely. The shot to his chest had done terrible damage. Jimin gathered the large cat into her arms, not caring about the blood that soaked her uniform. "The shuttle," she whispered to him. "We need to get to the shuttle." The bay doors were almost closed. The interpreter shouted orders as his guards tried to stop the launch sequence. Captain Suman and Minji ran to Jimin, firing their weapons to keep the Vash back. "We have to go now," Captain Suman said, helping Jimin lift Taejo. Together, they carried the dying Puma to the shuttle as Minji covered them. The doors of the shuttle closed just as the first Vash guards reached it. Through the windows, Jimin could see the interpreter's face, twisted with anger as their escape vehicle prepared to launch. The shuttle engines fired, pushing them away from the station and toward the horizon. But Jimin barely noticed. She sat on the floor, holding Taejo in her arms. His blood was everywhere now, pooling on the metal floor. "Stay with me," she begged, her tears falling onto his fur. "Please stay with me." Through their mental link, she felt his life fading. But there was no fear in his mind, only a peaceful acceptance. Images flowed between them one last time. Sunlight on Earth's grass, the stars seen from the ship's window, Jimin's face when she smiled at him. Captain Suman tried to help with the medical kit, but they both knew it was too late. Taejo had lost too much blood. His advanced biology had kept him alive this long, but even he couldn't survive such wounds. "I'm sorry," Captain Suman said softly, placing a hand on Jimin's shoulder. Taejo's breathing grew slower. His golden eyes, always so bright and alert, began to dim. But they remained fixed on Jimin's face until the end. She felt his consciousness touching hers, sharing one final emotion: contentment. His purpose had been fulfilled. Jimin was safe. Then, just as the shuttle docked with the horizon, Jimin felt something strange in her mind. A soft, rumbling purr filled her thoughts. It wasn't a sound anyone else could hear. It was Taejo's final gift to her, the feeling of complete trust and love. The Puma's eyes closed. His great chest rose once more, then fell still. The purr in Jimin's mind slowly faded, leaving behind an echo she would never forget. "He's gone," she whispered. The crew of the Horizon was waiting when they opened the shuttle doors. Medical teams rushed in to help the wounded. Captain Jawan stepped forward, his face serious. "We received your warning," he said. "The ship is ready to jump to light speed as soon as you're aboard." Jimin didn't move. She continued to hold Taejo's body, unwilling to let go. "Lieutenant," Captain Jawan said gently, "we need to go." "He saved us all," Jimin said, her voice breaking. He knew what would happen, but he did it anyway. As they carried Taejo's body to the medical bay, the Horizon broke orbit and sped away from the Vash planet. The data Dong Yun had stolen would warn Earth about the alien threat. Humanity would be ready when the Vash came. 3 days later, as the ship traveled through space toward home, Dr. Hyunju Baek called Jimin to the lab. The doctor's face was excited. "I found something in your brain scans," she said. When I compared them to Taijo's neural patterns, she showed Jimin the images on the screen. Part of him is still here, in your mind. His patterns have merged with yours through your telepathic bond. He's still with you, Jimin. In a way, he always will be. Jimin touched the screen, tears filling her eyes again. She could feel it now, a familiar presence in her thoughts. Not just memories, but something more. The puma had bled out in her arms, but his last purr was still with her, and always would be.